Gen Z's global rebellion reaches Mexico City. According to the Associated Press and Reuters, thousands of mostly young protesters filled Mexico City's historic center to denounce crime, corruption, and impunity. The march began peacefully but ended in violent clashes, with more than 100 people injured and about 20 arrested. Mexico's president claims the Gen Z branded movement is being amplified by right-wing groups and social media bots trying to steer youthful anger toward partisan goals. But on the streets, the issues run deeper: rampant violence, murdered local officials, an underfunded healthcare system, and a widespread belief that powerful people rarely face consequences. And Mexico is not alone. In Nepal, youth-led protests against a social media ban helped push out a prime minister. In Bangladesh, students have rallied against unemployment and corruption. Young people have driven pension protests in France, democracy marches in Thailand, and anti-police abuse movements in Nigeria. Rising inequality, climate anxiety, bleak job markets, and the constant visibility of global injustice online have combined to spark a worldwide wave of youthful rebellion. Okay, so what's the real message here? It does seem to be there are a lot of angry young people, not just in the United States, not just in Mexico, not just in Thailand, but everywhere. What's driving this? I think it's partly because of social media, more transparency and more governments. They realize they're getting screwed over by people like me, older, gray-haired people. Sad to say, but it's true. Okay, let's dig a little bit deeper here. Everyone these days, unless you are among perhaps the 800 million poorest people living on the world, has access to the whole world because everyone has a cell phone. And with a cell phone, you have access to Instagram and Facebook and Telegram. And regardless of what your country does to ban certain platforms, there's others you are going to have access to. And it's a constant reminder that everybody has more than you if you're a young person, whether you're a teenager, in your 20s, or even 30s. Everyone seems to be having more fun in life than you. Everybody has more stuff. Everyone has a bigger house or apartment. Everyone has a nicer car. Everyone's traveling nicer. This resentment feeds on itself and it foments real discontent. We are seeing it in real time now. In Mexico, the president is saying that this is being fueled by right-wing agitators, and it's made to look like sort of a left-wing protest. Here's the thing. For someone who is young, early 20s perhaps, they don't even necessarily look at the world through an ideological prism. They're just angry and they feel like something's corrupt, something's got to change. I don't know what it is. I just want change. And that, in a sense, transcends any one ideology. So how is that going to change? One solution, and I'm saying this specific to the United States context. I cannot speak for everything that's going on in Bangladesh or even Mexico. But in the United States, young people have to learn how to vote. It's so much more enjoyable to go to a big protest, glamorous. It seems exciting to go to a protest, but voting on election day for a choice between some extreme right-wing person that you don't like at all and someone who seems like a mushy, moderate milquetoast person, that's not exciting. Unfortunately, that's how you create change. Even more so, run for office yourself. If you are 18 years old, you can run for a lot of positions of authority, at least in the United States. You can run for mayor in some places, and city council, commissioners of counties you can run for. Age 25, you can start running for Congress. So young people are going to have to start running for office because it's all well and good to say we don't like 80-year-old plus Joe Biden and soon to be 80-year-old Trump. Run for office yourself. You've got to change things because you got to realize old people have figured out the game. People like me have figured out the game. Now, this isn't necessarily how I vote, but people who look like me vote this way. They continually vote for politicians, give them more stuff. Now, they don't like to call it welfare, but when you get subsidies through lower taxes for buying a house rather than renting an apartment, that's free stuff. That's money in your. And a lot of baby boomers and people my age or older got houses for dirt cheap compared to today, and they were subsidized by the government for doing so. You young people, nah, you're not getting it. The other reason you're not is people like me, once they buy a house, start appearing at city commission zoning meetings. And we're all of a sudden very concerned about traffic. Oh, isn't this traffic awful? We better pass a law saying nobody can build new houses. And what do you know? The value of my house goes way up. Nobody can build new houses. And you as young people are totally screwed over because you can't buy a house because there aren't any. And the few that are there, prices have gone up 2, 3, 4, 5 times relative to inflation in the last generation, pricing you out unless you got a big rich daddy or sugar mama. So if you're resentful, if you feel like the deck has been stacked against you, you are 100% correct. Now, I can't speak for what's going on in every single country, but it is obvious now to more and more young people who love their phones, and hey, I love my phone, and spend time. It's never, ever been easier than today to compare. Now, in pre-digital times, pre-television time, you compared yourself to the person in your village who had 5 sheep and you only had 3. And you could be jealous about, oh, that person's got 2 more sheep than I do. That was the standard of comparison for most of human history. That person has, a cave that's got 2 holes, and I only have 1 hole. I mean, that's how people compared themselves. But today, thanks to social media, everyone can feel sorry for themselves. I've never yet met someone who didn't feel like deep down somehow they're getting the role. I won't say never, but it's very rare for me to meet someone who doesn't feel like they're kind of getting raw end of the deal compared to someone else they know who's just like them, but got some sweetheart deal or got some handout or won some lottery unfairly. It's because it's never been easier to compare words. Yeah, someone could say, I make $10 million a year, but it's not fair. This guy I went to business school is making $100 million a year. And I had to teach him statistics our second semester. It's not fair. And the person's making $10 million a year feeling. So there is resentment. It is simmering. It occasionally boils over. And sometimes there's violence. Let me give you a few more facts of what happened in Mexico City. The protest began peacefully, but there were clashes. More than 100 people were injured over the weekend. 20 were arrested. Organizers framed it as a Gen Z moment. There were older opposition supporters, sometimes right-wing factions in the case of Mexico, want to weaken the incumbent president of Mexico. We don't like her, and this is a way to attack. So I mentioned we've seen similar eruptions in Nepal, Bangladesh, France, Thailand, and Nigeria in just the last few months. The core drivers seem to be similar: inequality, corruption, weak rule of law, and a bleak job outlook. And that describes the United States, frankly. We've never been more unequal. Maybe if you go back to the Gilded Age in the late 1890s, corruption, arguably the United States government has never been more corrupt today. Rule of law, that's now considered essentially a gag line, a joke line, when the rest of the world looks at how the United States is governed. And a bleak job outlook. It is true, unemployment in relative terms is still very low in the United States, but that is in part because if someone is doing a couple shifts on Uber, another shift on Uber Eats, doing something else on Thumbtack where they've got to go fix someone's toilet, and they're cobbling together just enough money for rent, they're not technically considered unemployed. But if you ask that person, how do you feel about your job prospects? They would say, bleak. And yet it's not showing up in the unemployment data. And it's especially a problem for young people. Young with college degrees are finding in relative terms unemployment higher than it's been in a long time. And young people without college degrees, well, frankly, a lot of them have given up, especially young men. We're seeing millions of Americans in that category just give up. They're at home in their basement, their childhood bedrooms. They're not working. They're not in education, and they're not in relationships. They're not doing much of anything other than playing video games. Now, maybe it's harder to get those people to show up for protests because they don't want to leave their room. They are part of this mix of simmering discontent. My only message to you is if you are a young person, you want to change things, you do need to complain. That's a part of it. But in societies where there is still some elements of democracy, where a vote could still count, and I would say the United States is still in that category, or at least for a little while, you got to get off your duff and do the hard work of organizing, running candidates, supporting candidates who believe in your values, knocking on door after door, and fighting for the people you want. Because the old timers who are happy with the status quo, who really like inequality because it's in their favor, they're spending the big bucks. on candidates. They're recruiting the candidates they want. They're voting for the candidates they want. They are well organized. Going to have them game, and since you don't have more money than they do, you're going to have to out organize